Barbados is once again safely welcoming commercial flights and visitors to the island. We'll be releasing a series of communications updating Barbadians and visitors on the protocols and procedures in place to ensure the safety of us all. This is the first communication to keep you informed. COVID-19 protocols straight across the world vary from country to country, and with all the information out there, sometimes it's really hard to know exactly where to begin. So what we're going to do right now is give you a snapshot of Barbados' most recently updated protocols and show you how we intend to keep the gem of the Caribbean Sea as safe as possible. So picture it. The tourists have booked their flights and packed their bags. There's just one more step they need to complete before their scheduled flight. They must now complete a pre-arrival online embarkation-disembarkation form within 24 hours before arrival. This form will include information such as their intended address and health information, and will also allow for the uploading of COVID-19 PCR test results. Travelers can do so at www.travelform.gov.bb. Visitors are strongly encouraged to have negative COVID-19 PCR tests in English from an accredited or certified facility or laboratory within 72 hours of traveling from a high or medium risk country. If traveling from a low-risk country, they should take a test up to 5 days before traveling to Barbados. Their test results should be submitted electronically, and they are also advised to travel with a copy of the results. The Ministry of Health and Wellness in Barbados will then validate their submitted results, and these results must have the traveler's name included. So they've completed their ED forms, they've uploaded their test results, they've had a great flight and landed safely. So let's tell you what happens next. They'll be required to undergo a health assessment, which includes a temperature check using state-of-the-art thermal screening and a brief interview by port health personnel. They must not forget their mask. It's required and must be worn at the airport. Once arriving from a high-risk country without a negative COVID-19 PCR test result within 72 hours of arrival, persons will be required to be tested in Barbados at the airport. If traveling from a medium-risk country, they must have a COVID-19 PCR test within 72 hours. If they don't have the results, they will be tested in Barbados and will be required to wait at the airport, a designated holding hotel, or an approved villa for their results. Remember, they must remain in quarantine until their results are made available, and that usually comes back in around 24 hours. If traveling from a low-risk country and have not visited a high-risk country within 21 days prior to arrival, they must present the valid results of a test done 5 days prior to arrival. In-transit visitors will be assessed using the highest risk level assigned to countries they've recently visited. These visitors must have a valid negative COVID-19 PCR test, or they may be denied entry into Barbados. Please note, the Ministry of Health and Wellness reserves the right to test anyone for COVID-19 regardless of the documentation presented on arrival. Now you may ask about minors. If under the age of 5, they are not required to present a negative COVID-19 PCR test unless they are symptomatic or any member of their traveling party tests positive for COVID-19. If the minor is unaccompanied, they must present a negative COVID-19 PCR test to be granted entry. Persons with non-standard circumstances that need to be addressed should contact the Ministry of Health and Wellness by emailing cmo@health.gov.bb at least 72 hours prior to travel to Barbados to have their requests addressed and facilitated. Now, if they do not have a negative test result and they decline to be tested on arrival, they will not be allowed entry into Barbados. If persons arriving are citizens, permanent residents, or persons with permanent status, and they do not have a negative test and they decline to be tested on arrival, they will be quarantined at a government facility. Now, all persons who have been deemed to have come into close proximity with a positive COVID-19 case will be quarantined at approved facilities. Arriving from a high-risk country, they will be required to have a negative COVID-19 PCR test and will be quarantined for 14 days at an approved facility. Alternatively, they can quarantine for a period of 7 days and take a second COVID-19 test. Now, once this test is negative and health clearance is given, there will be no further quarantine required. If you're arriving from a medium-risk country, they will be monitored for 14 days and may be asked to take a second COVID-19 PCR test. Again, once negative and health clearance is given, no further monitoring will be required. Visitors from low-risk countries with a negative COVID-19 PCR test may advance to immigration, baggage claim, and customs, and will be permitted to leave the airport once cleared. They've received their negative test results and have cleared all the necessary protocols. So now it's time for sun, sea, and relaxation. All visitors must abide by all public health and social measures in place in Barbados related to COVID-19 risk reduction, including physical distancing, hygiene practices, wearing of face masks, and all other relevant measures. If experiencing any symptoms, all persons are required to report such to public health officials or the relevant hotel or accommodation management. Look out for our next communication where we'll give you more information to keep you informed.